She had ruled 1,000 stars without ever bowing her head, until the sky split open and her empire burned. Everyone believed the alien queen was dead. Her enemies celebrated. Her people mourned. The throne stood empty. But beneath the wreckage of a fallen battlefield, she opened her eyes, not to silence, not to glory, but to a human smiling at her like saving a queen was the most ordinary thing in the universe. Chapter 1 begins in fire and ruin, not with triumph but with collapse. The alien queen, whose presence once steadied entire star systems, remembers the battlefield folding in on itself like a dying star. Warships fracture above her, their hulls glowing like broken constellations. The ground beneath her boots shatters under orbital bombardment. She issues her last command with the calm of someone who has never imagined defeat could apply to her personally. Then betrayal, coordinates leaked, shields disabled at the worst possible second. The sky turns white. And then nothing. When she wakes, the universe has shrunk to a cracked ceiling and a pair of unfamiliar brown eyes studying her with careful concern. She expects the ceremonial gates of her ancestors, or perhaps the cold silence of extinction. Instead, she sees a human man leaning over her, sleeves rolled up, face smudged with soot, smiling as if she has merely overslept. He tells her she is alive with the kind of relief usually reserved for finding lost keys. The absurdity almost offends her. She tries to sit up and discovers pain has opinions about that. Her long, elegant ears, distinctive among her people, tapering gracefully past her dark hair, twitch at every distant metallic groan of the wreckage around them. She looks human at first glance, but the ears and the faint silver undertone of her skin betray her origin. Her crown is gone. Her armor is gone. Her authority feels misplaced, as if someone forgot to reinstall it after the explosion. The human explains, awkwardly but earnestly, that he dragged her from the debris. He apologizes for the mess, as though she is a guest and not a deposed galactic monarch lying on improvised bedding made from torn insulation panels. He has constructed a crude medical station from battlefield scraps and a portable medkit, clearly not rated for royalty. He assures her that he has no demands, no ransom plan, no dramatic villain speech prepared. He even jokes that if he had known she was a queen, he would have at least cleaned up first. The tension of survival softens in small, unexpected moments. He mispronounces her name repeatedly. She corrects him with icy dignity. He tries again and somehow makes it worse. He offers her water in a dented canteen and bows with exaggerated ceremony that makes her wince, not from injury, but from disbelief. No one has bowed to her ironically before. Through fractured beams of alien sunlight, a fragile partnership forms. She, stripped of power but not pride. He, armed with nothing but stubborn decency and a talent for inappropriate humor. The chapter closes not on vengeance, but on the quiet shock that the most feared ruler in the quadrant has survived because a human refused to leave her behind. Chapter 2 expands beyond the wreckage into the uneasy reality of recovery. The queen, accustomed to commanding fleets with a gesture, must now negotiate with her own injured body. The human, who introduces himself as an engineer rather than a soldier, keeps watch for scavenger drones and rival patrols. He explains that humans were technically neutral in the conflict, then shrugs and admits neutrality felt less important when someone was bleeding in front of him. Science fiction elements unfold through their attempts to survive. He powers a damaged alien medical device by jury-rigging it to a human reactor cell, proudly announcing that cross-cultural engineering is just a fancy phrase for guessing until something hums. The device scans her physiology, projecting holographic skeletal structures that flicker over her luminous skin. It comments in an automated voice that she is statistically unlikely to survive. The human taps the device and tells it to adjust its statistics. As she regains strength, glimpses of her past authority surface. She describes star corridors that bend space like silk. She recounts commanding fleets capable of eclipsing suns. Yet here she is, arguing with a human about whether she is allowed to stand up without assistance. He insists she sit. She insists she has led planetary invasions. He replies that leading invasions does not qualify as medical clearance. Humor threads through their conversations. He asks if all alien queens are this stubborn, or if it is a royal hobby. She responds that humans are surprisingly insolent for a species with comparatively primitive hyperdrives. He counters that primitive hyperdrives still get excellent mileage. Slowly, the imbalance between them shifts, not in power, but in perception. She begins to see that he does not measure worth by rank or genetic superiority. He measures it by whether someone needs help. Meanwhile, distant signals hint that the war is not over. Her empire believes her dead. Rival factions consolidate power. Automated distress beacons flicker across orbit. She could attempt to reclaim her throne immediately, but she hesitates. For the first time in decades, someone speaks to her without fear. The chapter ends with her quietly admitting that she does not know who she is without her crown, and the human, after a thoughtful pause, suggesting that perhaps that is an excellent time to find out. Chapter 3 turns from survival to choice. The queen, now able to walk with measured strength, stands beside the human atop a ridge of twisted metal, watching rescue ships pass overhead without detecting them. She could signal her loyalists. She could return to command, rebuild fleets, punish betrayal. Yet something has shifted in her understanding of power. She studies the human as he tinkers with a long-range communicator, humming off-key. He jokes that if her people see him standing next to her, they might assume he is the royal court jester. She informs him such a position does not exist. He suggests they consider creating one, for morale purposes. She almost laughs, and realizes she has not laughed in years. Science fiction grandeur rises again as she reactivates a concealed quantum beacon embedded beneath her skin, a failsafe only a reigning monarch possesses. The air shimmers with encoded light. Her long ears catch the hum of subspace resonance. The Empire will know she lives within minutes. She hesitates before completing the signal. In that pause, the story's central theme crystallizes. Power built on fear collapses quickly. Power built on loyalty endures. The human has nothing, no fleet, no throne, no obligation, yet he stayed. Not for glory, not for reward, simply because leaving would have felt wrong. She completes the signal, but not as a conqueror reborn. When her rescue fleet arrives, she stands not above the human, but beside him. Her commanders kneel in awe. She introduces the human plainly, without embellishment. The mightiest empire in the quadrant witnesses something unprecedented. Their queen alive because a single human chose compassion over caution. The chapter closes on a quieter note than war would suggest. Back aboard her flagship, she retrieves her crown but does not place it on her head immediately. Instead, she looks through the viewport at the human ship docked nearby. Empires may command stars, but humanity, stubborn, impractical, occasionally ridiculous, commands something rarer. And as she finally sets the crown upon her brow, there is a subtle change in her rule. Not softer, but wiser, shaped by the memory of waking to a gentle smile where she expected only death. The last thing she remembered was the sky tearing open. Not metaphorically, not poetically. The sky had literally split along a fault line of white plasma as orbital cannons carved luminous scars across the atmosphere. Her flagship had trembled under her boots, ancient alloy groaning like an old titan offended by mortality. Around her, command consoles had erupted in spirals of holographic warnings, glyphs flashing in urgent violet. "Stabilize the eastern shield array," she had ordered, her voice steady enough to shame the storm. The array had not stabilized. Someone had whispered betrayal through encrypted channels. Someone had sold the coordinates. Someone had calculated her death down to the decimal. Then the bridge had dissolved in light. When she opened her eyes, she did not see the ancestral halls of her people. No marble towers, no endless auroras. Just a ceiling cracked, slanted, dripping faint sparks like a lazy constellation that had given up. She inhaled sharply. Air, thin, dusty, real, pain followed, sharp and personal. It ran along her ribs, coiled around her spine, and settled in her left shoulder like a small, vindictive creature. She tried to move. The creature objected. "Well," a voice said above her, warm and embarrassingly relieved, "that's a good sign." She turned her head. A human face hovered into focus. Dark hair matted with soot. brown eyes wide with concern. No helmet, no insignia, no expression of triumph, just a smile that seemed almost apologetic. "You're alive," he said, as though he had been holding his breath for hours. Her long ears twitched instinctively, brushing against rough fabric beneath her head. The movement made him blink in fascination. "Okay," he murmured. "That's new." She attempted to sit up. The vindictive creature in her shoulders screamed. She fell back with a controlled hiss. "Right," the human said quickly. "Maybe don't do that. I just put your arm back where I think it belongs." Her eyes narrowed. "You what?" His smile faltered. Relocated it, gently, mostly gently. She became aware of her state with slow, rising disbelief. Her armor gone. The ceremonial plates forged from stellar ore gone. The neural crown that had rested upon her brow for 3 decades, absent. In their place, coarse fabric wrapped her torso. Something sticky held her side together. Improvised bandages. The queen of 1,000 systems lay swaddled in what felt suspiciously like cargo netting. Her gaze sharpened. "Where is my guard?" He glanced around at the collapsed beams, the fractured hull plates, the distant hiss of ruptured conduits. "Currently," he said, "unavailable." Silence pressed in. Memory returned in fragments, impact, screaming metal, the deck vanishing beneath her boots. She had felt gravity twist sideways. She had seen her generals disintegrate in white fire. She was supposed to be dead. Her long ears lifted slightly as distant debris shifted somewhere beyond the shattered wall. Instinct scanned for threats. There were many, but none immediate. "You remained," she said slowly. He blinked. "Yeah." "Why?" He looked genuinely confused by the question. "You were breathing." "That is insufficient reason." He shrugged. Seemed like enough at the time. She studied him. Humans were a minor power. Persistent, irritatingly adaptive. Their hyperdrives lagged behind her empires by 3 generations. Their ships were efficient but inelegant. Their diplomacy unpredictable. This one wore a torn engineer's jacket and boots held together by optimism. "You are not armed," she observed. "Not in a dramatic way, no. And yet you approached me." "You were under a beam," he said. "It felt rude to leave you there." She stared at him. He stared back. A small metallic drone crawled across the floor nearby, its lens flickering weakly. He lunged sideways and gently kicked it. "Not now," he muttered. The drone sparked and died. "You disabled my reconnaissance unit," she said flatly. He froze. "That was yours." She considered letting him suffer. "Yes." He winced. "Ah, I thought it was trying to scan me for snacks." Despite the pain radiating through her body, something unfamiliar tugged at the corner of her mind. It felt suspiciously like amusement. She suppressed it immediately. "You have interfered with imperial property," she said. "You're welcome," he replied automatically, then winced again. "Sorry, that came out wrong." She attempted once more to rise. The room tilted unpleasantly. He stepped forward but stopped short of touching her. "Easy. I do not require assistance. You're concussed. I have commanded fleets while impaled." "Great," he said. "Today you're commanding this floor." She glared at him. He held up both hands. "Look, I'm not your enemy. I dragged you out before the scavenger drones could identify you. I patched what I could. I'm running a perimeter scan every 5 minutes. And I'm 90% sure your internal bleeding has slowed to a socially acceptable level." Her ears angled toward him, incredulous. 90%. 85, he amended. "I rounded up for morale." She closed her eyes briefly. This was absurd. She should have awakened in glory or oblivion. Instead, she had awakened to a human estimating her survival like a malfunctioning calculator. "What is your designation?" she asked. "Name," he clarified. "Daniel." "Daniel," she repeated carefully. The syllables felt blunt compared to the melodic structure of her own name. He brightened. "You got it on the first try. That's rare. I do not fail at pronunciation. Give it time." Silence settled again, though less oppressive than before. Light filtered through the fractured ceiling in pale bands. Dust drifted lazily through the beams, glittering like a subdued galaxy. Daniel moved to a makeshift console assembled from a cracked display and several wires that had no business cooperating. He adjusted something. A faint hum filled the air. "What are you doing?" she demanded. Borrowing power from your wrecked shuttle, he said. Your tech's beautiful, by the way, very dramatic. Mine usually just blinks and apologizes. That shuttle is calibrated exclusively to my genetic signature. Yeah, he said, tightening a connection. It mentioned that. We had a brief disagreement. Her eyes widened. You interfaced with it. I may have introduced it to a universal override key. That key does not exist. He gave her a sheepish look. It does now. A soft chime echoed through the space as the lights brightened slightly. Her ears lifted involuntarily at the clearer resonance of stabilized systems. Daniel noticed. Is that like a mood ring situation, or? They respond to environmental frequency, she said sharply. Cool, he murmured. Mine just burn when I forget sunscreen. She turned her head slowly toward him. You speak excessively. It helps with not panicking. You are panicking. Constantly, he said cheerfully, but in a very productive way. She studied him again, recalibrating. His heart rate audible to her enhanced hearing was elevated. His hands trembled slightly when idle. He was afraid. He had stayed anyway. A distant boom rolled through the wreckage. Both of them froze. He checked the scanner. Just structural settling. Your certainty is unfounded. Completely, he agreed, but it sounds confident. She exhaled carefully. My empire believes me dead, she said. He glanced at her. Is that bad? She considered the question. Yes. He nodded slowly. Okay, so step one, don't be dead. I had not considered that strategy. He smiled faintly. That's what I'm here for. Her gaze drifted upward again. The fractured ceiling revealed a slice of sky, bruised and distant. Smoke trailed across it in long, fading scars. She had ruled beneath that sky, commanded legions, issued decrees that reshaped civilizations. Now she lay on salvaged insulation while a human engineer lectured her about hydration. He approached with a canteen. Drink. She hesitated. It's filtered, he added. Twice, I think. She took it, their fingers brushed. His skin was warm, solid, unremarkable and yet entirely real. She drank. The water tasted faintly metallic and profoundly alive. Daniel watched her carefully as though expecting her to dissolve. When she did not, he nodded in satisfaction. See, not dead. She lowered the canteen. You derive excessive pride from minimal accomplishments. I take what I can get. Another tremor shuddered through the hull. Dust cascaded softly around them. Her ears angled toward the horizon beyond the broken wall. Patrol craft, she murmured. He checked the scanner again. You can hear that. Yes. He squinted at the device. It says nothing. It is outdated. It's 3 weeks old. Ancient. He stared at her for a moment, then burst into quiet laughter. You're unbelievable. I am. The sound of distant engines intensified, a low vibration threading through the air. She felt it in her bones. Daniel powered down the lights immediately. The space dimmed to shadow. He crouched beside her. Can you stay quiet? He whispered. She stared at him. He nodded. Right, stupid question. The patrol passed overhead, its engines fading gradually. They remained still long after the sound disappeared. In the darkness, she could hear his breathing. Uneven, controlled. You risk much, she said softly. Yeah. For no gain. He considered that. You're not no gain, he said finally. She turned her head toward him, though she could barely see his face. You do not know me. True, he admitted. But I know what it looks like when someone shouldn't be left behind. Silence settled between them again, different now. She had commanded loyalty through fear, through strength, through inevitability. This was something else. The faintest hint of light began to return as smoke thinned outside. Daniel exhaled slowly. Okay, he said, voice quiet but steady. Step 1 complete. She raised an eyebrow in the dark. You have achieved something. You woke up, he said. That counts. For the first time since the sky had split open, the alien queen allowed the possibility that survival might not be a humiliation. It might be the beginning of something far stranger. The first Imperial warship emerged from subspace like a blade slipping free of velvet. Daniel was lying on his back on the ridge of twisted alloy, holding a recalibrated transmitter above his face and arguing with it. If you can bend space, he muttered, you can at least connect to public channels. The Queen stood beside him. balanced easily despite the jagged metal beneath her boots. Her strength had returned in measured increments over the past cycles. The bandages were gone. The pain had retreated to a tolerable whisper. Her long ears angled toward the sky, catching frequencies no human instrument could yet parse. "They are here," she said quietly. Daniel squinted upward. The sky shimmered, then split along a precise seam of blue light. A vessel descended, vast and deliberate, its hull unfolding like articulated wings. Silver arcs of energy rippled along its surface, scanning. He whistled softly. "That's dramatic." "It is a modest escort," she replied. "Of course it is." 3 smaller craft peeled away, fanning out in disciplined arcs. Their scanning beams brushed the wreckage. Daniel's transmitter crackled and died with a pathetic pop. He looked at it. "Traitor." She stepped forward to the edge of the ridge. A beam of pale light descended, not striking but enveloping. It traced her silhouette, mapping, verifying. Her skin glowed faintly as embedded royal implants responded to encrypted recognition codes. A voice boomed across the air, layered and harmonic. "Genetic signature confirmed. Sovereign alive." Daniel winced, subtle. From the nearest shuttle, a contingent of armored figures emerged, their armor seamless and luminous, weapons folded but ready. They moved with reverent. A beam of pale light descended, not striking but enveloping. It traced her silhouette, mapping, verifying. Her skin glowed faintly as embedded royal implants responded to encrypted recognition codes. A voice boomed across the air, layered and harmonic. "Genetic signature confirmed. Sovereign alive." Daniel winced, subtle. From the nearest shuttle, a contingent of armored figures emerged, their armor seamless and luminous, weapons folded but ready. They moved with reverent precision until they saw her. They knelt, all at once. Metal met metal in a synchronized echo. Daniel blinked. "Oh, that's a thing." She did not move immediately. She studied them. Their helmets lowered. Their posture was flawless. Loyal, too loyal. "Rise," she commanded at last. They rose as one. The lead commander stepped forward and removed his helmet. His eyes were bright with something dangerously close to relief. "We mourned you," he said. "I noticed," she replied dryly, glancing at the crater that had once been her command post. He hesitated, then bowed his head. "The usurpers have consolidated 2 sectors. They declared your line extinguished." Clearly premature. His gaze shifted past her, to Daniel. There was a subtle tightening in the formation behind him. Daniel lifted a hand in an awkward half-wave. "Hi." The commander's expression did not soften. "This human," he began carefully, "is in proximity to your radiance." Daniel leaned toward her. "Is that your official nickname? Because I support it." She ignored him. "He removed me from the battlefield," she said evenly. "He shielded me from scavengers. He repaired my injuries with limited resources and questionable tools." Daniel brightened. "Hey, the tools were fine." The commander looked faintly horrified. "You owe him your survival," he asked. "I do." A ripple moved through the assembled soldiers. Not disbelief, adjustment. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "You're welcome." The Queen stepped down from the ridge and approached her commander. He was taller than Daniel, armored in alloys forged for vacuum and war. She had once valued such displays unquestioningly. Now she found herself measuring something else. "What is the current state of the inner council?" she asked. "Fragmented," he replied. "Several houses moved to claim succession. There is unrest." "And the citizens?" "Confused, grieving, angry." Daniel raised a tentative hand. "I can confirm the angry part. There were a lot of explosions." The commander looked as though he might personally detonate. She lifted one elegant hand slightly. He fell silent. "I will return," she said, "but not as before." The commander blinked. Daniel leaned closer. "That sounds ominous." She allowed herself the faintest curve of a smile. "Prepare a transmission," she ordered. Within minutes, a portable hololithic array was deployed across the wreckage. Blue light spiraled upward, forming a towering projection visible across orbit. Daniel stood just outside the projection field, watching her silhouette multiply into the sky. Every channel opened. Across fractured fleets and occupied sectors, her image resolved. She stood without crown, without armor, illuminated by salvage lights and distant stars. "My people," she began. Her voice carried through vacuum and atmosphere alike, transmitted through quantum relays and loyal networks that had waited for a pulse. "You were told I had fallen." Silence answered from millions of receivers. "I did." A ripple of stunned whispers spread through the fleets. "I fell because I believed strength alone ensured loyalty. I fell because I underestimated fear." Behind her, the commander stiffened slightly. Daniel folded his arms, listening. "I was saved," she continued, "not by the might of our legions, but by the will of one who owed me nothing." The projection widened slightly, revealing Daniel at the edge of the field. He blinked at the sudden magnification of his own startled face. "Oh no," he muttered. "This human," she said clearly, "remained when others fled." He acted without command, without expectation of reward. Daniel cleared his throat. "In my defense, it seemed rude to leave." A faint, confused murmur traveled through the transmission network. She felt it, curiosity displacing anger. "Our empire has prized dominance," she said. "We have measured worth in conquest." Her long ears lifted, catching the subtle shift in collective attention. "That measure is incomplete." The commander stared at her, as though gravity had altered direction. "We will rebuild," she said, "but not through terror, not through inherited fear." Daniel whispered, "You're rewriting policy on a pile of debris. That's bold." She continued, unshaken. "Strength is not diminished by compassion. It is defined by it." Across sectors, warships held position. Generals listened. Citizens leaned toward their screens. "The usurpers will stand down," she said. "Or they will answer not to my wrath, but to the will of a united people who have remembered what loyalty truly is." Daniel glanced sideways at the commander. "That's worse, right?" The commander did not answer. She lowered her voice slightly, more personal now. "I return not as an untouchable symbol, but as one who has fallen and risen." The projection shimmered faintly. "I have learned that survival is not victory, it is opportunity." She ended the transmission. The sky returned to its fractured quiet. For a moment, no one moved. Then the commander bowed again, not from protocol but from recognition. "As you command," he said. She regarded him steadily. "We command." He hesitated, then nodded. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Well, that was a speech." She turned toward him. "You disapprove." "Are you kidding?" he said. "You just restructured an empire without yelling once." "I have yelled before." "I can imagine." A shuttle descended smoothly behind them. The commander gestured. "Your flagship awaits." She looked at it, gleaming and restored in orbit. For years, that sight had filled her with certainty. Now it filled her with perspective. She turned back to Daniel. "You will accompany us." He blinked. "I will what?" "You are under imperial protection." "That sounds like a fancy way of saying kidnapped." She tilted her head slightly. "You prefer to remain in a war zone." He considered the smoking ruins around them. "Fair point." They boarded the shuttle. Inside, the walls hummed with restrained power. Interfaces responded to her presence instantly. Systems realigned around her biometric signature. She felt the ship recognize her. For the first time, she did not immediately move toward the command dais. Instead, she remained beside Daniel as he stared out the viewport at the shrinking wreckage below. "You could have left," she said quietly. He shrugged. "Yeah." "Why did you not?" He thought for a long moment. "Because if I had," he said finally, "I'd have known." "Known what?" "That I chose easier over right." She absorbed that. The shuttle docked with the flagship in a seamless magnetic embrace. Doors opened onto corridors of polished light. Officers lined the passage, heads bowed. She stepped forward. They straightened instinctively, waiting for the cold precision they remembered. She walked past them at an unhurried pace. "Lift your heads," she said calmly. They did. She met their eyes one by one, not from above, from level ground. Behind her, Daniel leaned toward a nearby officer and whispered, "Is there a manual for all this, or do you just practice?" The officer blinked twice, uncertain whether to answer. She heard him anyway. "There is no manual," she said. Daniel nodded solemnly. "I figured." They reached the central chamber. Her crown rested upon its pedestal, gleaming under focused light. For years, placing it upon her head had felt inevitable. Now she approached it slowly. Daniel hovered awkwardly at the threshold. She lifted the crown. It was lighter than she remembered. She did not put it on immediately. Instead, she turned to face the chamber. "My reign continues," she said, her voice resonant but steady. "But it evolves." The officers watched, breath held. She placed the crown upon her brow. No thunder rolled. No dramatic surge of power erupted. Only a quiet alignment, a merging of who she had been and who she had chosen to become. She felt the difference. Authority remained. But so did humility. Daniel cleared his throat softly. "Still dramatic," he said approvingly. A few officers looked scandalized. She almost laughed. "Daniel," she said, turning slightly toward him. "Yes, your radiance." She arched an eyebrow. "Right, sorry. You will serve as liaison to humanity." His eyes widened. "That sounds like paperwork." "It is." He sighed. "I saved a queen and got administration." "You also altered an empire." He considered that. "Okay," he admitted. "That's fair." The commander stepped forward. "The usurpers have signaled willingness to negotiate." "Of course they have," Daniel murmured. "Funny how that works." She moved to the central console. "Open channels," she ordered. As systems activated around her, she felt no lingering desire for vengeance. Only resolve. The war would end, not because she returned with fury, but because she returned with clarity. Daniel leaned casually against a column, watching her with a faint smile. "You know," he said, "when I found you, I didn't expect this." "Nor did I," she replied. "Any regrets?" She looked at the vast starfield beyond the viewport. "No." Her long ears caught the subtle hum of synchronized fleets aligning across sectors, not for conquest, but for stability. She had believed death awaited her. Instead, she had awakened to a human smile and discovered something far more destabilizing than betrayal. Change, she glanced once more at Daniel. "You speak excessively," she said. He grinned. "It helps with not panicking." She allowed herself a small, unguarded smile. This time, she did not suppress it. And as the empire shifted course beneath her steady hand, the queen who had once ruled through distance now ruled through understanding. No longer untouchable, no longer alone, and no longer defined solely by the weight of her crown.